So welcome along to a freezing cold Timeform head office here in Halifax. There's snow everywhere to be seen. There's empty seats all over the top floor, but myself and Jamie Lynch have battled the cold, and because we love Timeform, don't we?
We love racing. We certainly love racing, and even on a blank weekend we're here to talk about racing and to just widen our horizons a bit. So unable to chat much, if at all, about the weekend racing because there isn't that much weekend racing.
Unless you love jumpers bumpers.
So a far better use of this time, I think, is to maybe kick off what could be a new series, depending on how well this goes, how much you enjoy it. And what we call this is ranking the races. You have to make sure you've got your teeth in when you say that. Ranking the races. And what we've decided to do is take a race, a big race coming up, and of course we've got our a whole assortment to choose from at Cheltenham. And from a personal touch, probably more than a Timeform touch, I'm going to tell you my 5 favourite renewals of that race and why. Now, like I said, sometimes it's to do with ratings themselves. We've got that Timeform hat, which we wear at all times. Sometimes to do with personal approach, sometimes to do with the drama or the history or the significance. So loads of different factors. We're not going right back in time. I'm afraid that you're younger still than me, and a couple of these on here, you were scratching your head saying, I've never ever heard of that horse.
Had to watch a couple of the races.
So we're just doing it in sort of my racing lifetime. The cut-off point generally is the year 2000, but if this goes well, there'll be other faces talking about their races and what they liked. So that's the sort of general idea, the general theme. We're going to start with the Supreme, because it's a brilliant race and one of your favourite races of the year.
Yeah, I would say so. I was going to ask you actually. Is it a silly question? Is it your favourite race of the festival?
Well, I've always sort of been more a flat person than a jumps person, and the Supreme is almost like the closest we get to a flat race at Cheltenham. Obviously, we've got the bumper, but in terms of speed, in terms of power, in terms of sort of high class acceleration, we tend to get the flat horses themselves even making that transition to the Supreme. So there's a lot to do with the significance of the race and how it can work out and how it can provide a window to the future. There's a lot to do with the class and the speed involved in the Supreme. And of course, Nick, first and foremost, there's a lot to do with it being first and foremost on the Cheltenham calendar, whereby it is the race that kicks us all off. It is the race which generates that roar, and it is the race which sets the tone and sets the pulse for the whole meeting.
So we'll jump into number 5, and it's back to 2002. And I won't tell you how old I was when this race was run, but it was a well back favourite that year.
Yeah. So number 5 on my rankings for the Supreme, 2002, the renewal that was won by Like a Butterfly. Now, if you've never heard of Like a Butterfly, like my compatriot to the left here, just go and have a look at her record. Go and have a look, moreover, at her SP, her starting price for the Supreme, because the Supreme has got a history of big gambles, big Irish gambles in particular, going awry. I remember Sweet Wake, I remember Cousin Vinny, I certainly remember Dungwib, as these big, huge hype horses that came over from Ireland were expected just to roll and steamroll the Supreme. It didn't happen for them. It nearly didn't happen for Like a Butterfly, but that was all about the drama. The Supreme, as it should be for the whole of Cheltenham, should be about the drama. And when you've got a horse who went off 7-4 favourite, with almost every Irishman who was either at Cheltenham or at home or anywhere around the world who seemed to have backed this, then that gave the race and the renewal great significance. And what else added to the drama was the fact that Adamant Approach, then for the sort of little-known Willie Mullins and Ruby Walsh combination, they had just come to head Like a Butterfly at the last when Adamant Approach came down, and that seemed to leave the way clear for Like a Butterfly to press home that advantage and press home the pounds or the punts for Ireland. And then, somehow, AP McCoy conjured up another run from West Ender. These two had sort of gone head-to-head from some way out, and McCoy rallied and galvanised West Ender, but Like a Butterfly held on. And a sort of stark image in my mind is Charlie Swan sort of stood aloft in the irons, saluting the crowd, and that whole, it seemed to me like that was really when the Supreme hit home to me of what it was all about and sort of really came of age. It was a magical renewal, principally because we had a gambled on, hugely expected, hugely anticipated Irish favourite that went and did the job. So in terms of drama, for the final fence fall, for the heavy support, for the rally by McCoy, it just had it all. So the number 5 on my list is that 2002 Supreme, won by Like a Butterfly.
No, I was too young really in 2002 to remember the newspaper articles, but please tell me that it said like a butterfly stings bookmakers like a bee, or stings like a bee, or something like that.
See, I forgot about your expert knowledge in your specialised subject, which is pretty ropey
like
puns, but that's why there's a headline writer within you somehow just waiting to get out, and I hope there was someone of your ilk and calibre who could have come up with that headline, because you're right, it is a beauty and it does sum up exactly what went on.
So on to number 4, and another one that was a few years back now.
Yeah, so we talked about the drama involved in the 2002 Supreme. I think that number 4 on my list, the 2004 Supreme, is more about the significance of the race. And it sometimes can be that the Supreme acts as a segue to stardom. And sometimes we don't quite know what we're watching. And when we watched the 2004 Supreme, we saw a battle-hardened brave Inca, 7-2 favourite, again expectation behind him. He was all out to hold off some 33-1 chance that no one had really heard of at the time. And it was a thrilling climax to the race. In terms of ratings, it wasn't the greatest we've seen on the day, but in terms of finish and a soul-stirring sort of climax to the race, it was brilliant. Because brave Inca, and as we come to learn more so in the future, really rolled his sleeves up and really got the job done when he was pressed hard. But then we come to the reason why it's in my top 5, and that's because of the significance of the Supreme and the significance of what not only Brave Inca but the runner-up War of Attrition went on to do, because Brave Inca was obviously a subsequent champion hurdle winner, and War of Attrition won no less than the Gold Cup later in his life. And it's remarkable how the Supreme is peppered with these sort of big stars who you wouldn't expect to turn up in a Supreme, but Kicking King was second, Best Mate was second. So it can be a race that's really significant for the future. We will talk more about that with other horses as we go through the countdown, but number 4 for me is a 2004 Supreme, won by Brave Inca, subsequent champion hurdle winner, from War of Attrition, subsequent Gold Cup winner. Hugely significant race for a taster of what the Supreme can do as a runway to sort of royalty within racing.
Now, some of our younger followers might have not remembered the first 2, but
jump aboard now, come on.
They'll certainly remember the number 3 on your list, because he was the first leg of what was a monumental gamble a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and that was Douvan we are talking about. Number 3 on my list, ranking the races for the Supreme, is 2015, and Douvan talked about the drama involved with Like a Butterfly, talked about the significance involved of Brave Inca beating War of Attrition. But this was just a solo performance, a virtuoso performance from Douvan, and there have been wider margin winners than him. There have been perhaps more striking winners than him in terms of margins involved and how and why they beat the fellow rivals up. But I can't remember, Nick, thinking back through the Supreme, a more sort of controlled, classy, powerful display. Aggression, all rolled in with class, all rolled in with the perfect harmony between Ruby and Douvan himself. We're sort of hitting on a few angles here, because, like we talked with the first 2, there was a significance in that Douvan, as we've seen in future seasons, and there still might be another chapter to be written, has been one of the headline acts for many years now, and it all started with this Supreme when he was 2-1 favourite. And that brings us to another fact that, at the time, Willie Mullins on the day was heading towards this big legs of accumulators. The Supreme was his at that time as well. We'd seen the 2 previous years won by Vautour and Champagne Fever, and they obviously are and were above average. But in terms of our ratings, Douvan just came and blew them all away in terms of what he did and was able to do that day. So for me, Douvan brings loads of things together, but primarily it was his class, that virtuoso performance. It takes some beating for me in terms of a Supreme, as one horse who grabbed the race by the scruff of the neck and said, "Look at me," and shouted, "Look at me, I'm brilliant." And of course it helps that back in third that day was Sizing John, another subsequent Gold Cup winner.
So from a good renewal there in 2015 to another, potentially even better one a couple of years later.
Exactly. So we talked about the drama of Like a Butterfly, the significance of Brave Inca, the solo performance of Douvan, and number 2 on my list sort of brings them all together and almost magnifies it, because we're talking now, number 2, about the 2017 Supreme that was won by Altior. And we're going to talk now about Timeform ratings, because essentially That is one. Yeah, we've got to wear that hat with pride. It is the one fiery arrow in our in our mix. It's what we can talk about. But when you get a winner and a second and a third that all break race winning standards from what we normally expect, then you know at the time that you're seeing something special. And the reverberations that are still going on now regarding the 2017 Supreme are obviously clear to you, to us and to everyone, because Altior won in such style. I remember him running away at the finish from Min, who at the time was presumed and perceived to be just the next one off the block for Tour, for Champagne Fever, for Duvan. It was going to be Min. It was Min's race, and it sort of shocked us all and changed the game a little bit that Altior ran away from him. Min and Altior, relevance to this festival, are obviously hopefully going to go head to head in the champion chase, and it tells you of how their careers have gone since that Supreme. But also back in third was the small matter of Bouverdare, who was on the cusp of becoming a dual champion hurdler. So I think that in terms of ratings and reverberations, the 2017 will be on anyone's list for ranking the races, ranking the Supreme in particular. And I think that Altior beating Min, beating Bouverdare is obviously telling of a hugely significant renewal, a hugely classy renewal, and one that was a gateway to greatness, not just for one horse, but for three of them. And maybe even four of them, because Super Sunday was back in seventh that year, and he has won an Irish Champion Hurdle this year and can easily, potentially, win a Stays, and add a Stays to that. So, in terms of sort of strength in depth, I can't remember a renewal quite like that 2017, which is number 2 on my list of ranking the Supreme.
And just to make you feel old, the final one on your list was the year that I finished my A-levels.
Wow, was it really? So if you're watching at home, that wasn't 2002. It's been a long day for Nick. It was 2011, because number 1 on my list in the Supreme rankings is Alpha Off winning the Supreme. And I just think that this brings together every single element that we've talked about individually regards the other in my top 5. Let's deal with the winner first and foremost, because it had that drama of a big grey thundering home under Ruby Wall. So I always sort of remember that near last to first surge by Alpha Off, who looked cooked at the top of the hill, but then really roared home, and it was one of those take your breath away moments. And I think it took Ruby's breath away as well, because he was ecstatic and elated after the line. So in one sense, we sort of felt that, yeah, that was a really good winning renewal at the time. It was sort of a bit above normal standards. We knew we were seeing something unusual with Alpha Off. He'd finished second in the champion bumper the year before. But even more so, we talked about ratings and reverberations with the Altior, number 2 on my list, but this is almost ratings and reverberations times 2 because of what went on subsequently. So Alpha Off, when he thundered home down the outside, he beat a horse called Spirit Sun for Nicky Henderson. Spirit Sun was plagued by injuries, and he just sort of, it's a shame for him that he never got the chance to fulfil that potential, because when you see who he was in and amongst, you get a real idea of the potential that Spirit Sun had, because he had a job on trying to match Altior in the finish. But Future tells us that he had a job on and actually did really well to beat the 3rd and 4th, because in 4th that day was Q Card. Yeah. Obviously the brilliant Q Card, who's been a mainstay throughout several seasons ever since then. The brilliant Q Card, still going strong. Saw what he did just a couple of weeks ago at Ascot. Great to see that fire still in the belly, and what fire in the belly he had. He was 7-4 favourite to win that Supreme. At the time we were all a bit underwhelmed and thought, well, that's it with Q Card's potential. But history has told us that finishing 4th in that race was actually a big achievement and a big pointer for what was to come. And I think that sort of rounding it up and clarifying the reason why that was the number 1 for me in terms of Supreme renewals. Yeah, we're going to talk about ratings again, but when you've got the birthplace, almost the runway, almost the take-off point for the highest rated national hunt horse in recent times, Sprinter Sacre, it's just that final plug, it's that final power surge that makes me think we need to deal with that as a number 1 renewal of the Supreme, because Sprinter Sacre, ridden by McCoy that day, He didn't even have the legs to go with Spirit Sun, his stablemate, never mind Alpha Off in the finish. But that was a really hugely meaningful race because it gave us a brilliant finish in terms of Alpha Off surge. It gave us a gateway into the future in terms of Q Card, who is still going strong, and most of all, it gave us Sprinter Sacre, the highest rated chaser, the horse who gave us great memories, shared moments in that brilliant career. It all more or less started with that Supreme. So for all those reasons combined, Nick, the 2011 renewal won by Alpha Off, featuring Q Card and Sprinter Sacre, is number one on my Supreme top 5 list.
Excellent stuff, and I'm desperate to ask you about this year's renewal, but I'm going to hold off because there's 2 opportunities to hear your views next week. Because we'll be in Manchester on Tuesday for the preview night. You'll be emceeing again.
I'll be emceeing.
Burning
I'll be rocking the microphone. You won't get me hear my views that much, but that's all good and well for you because the panel is peppered with far better, sharper minds than mine at Timeform. Dan Barber's here, as you've seen him regularly. Martin Dixon's on board, David Cleary's on board, and over from Ireland is Billy Nash. Hopefully, if the beast from the east alleviates. So that's a really big night at Manchester. Come along if you can.
And then on Thursday we'll be doing a live Facebook Q&A session, so a chance for people to grill you on Facebook rather than
grill away.
Me grilling you.
How long is that for? 10 minutes or something?
An hour.
A full hour.
Yeah. I think we did it last year as well. I can't quite remember. I think we did. So there's definitely precedent.
And do you like something on Facebook or not?
What do you
express? Do you communicate happiness through liking something or not?
Yes, yeah.
If you like what we've done with this ranking the races in the Supreme, like it, tell us, and we get a few more on board and up and running before Cheltenham with a few other faces. Because it's just a different way, hopefully a non-too time-formy way, because I know that we just talk about ratings sort of ad infinitum, but a bit of personal touch, a bit more in the round rather than just honing in those ratings. We can do lots of different races regards Cheltenham, lots of different faces talking about what it means to them and why, and who knows, we might go further back in time than 2000 if we can get a proper person involved in this.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Jamie.
Thanks everyone.